Good day, everybody. So today I went out for a ride and I was coming home and I was right at the three-way stop, probably less than a kilometer from my house. And I snapped my clutch cable, which is bad. Now, on a good note, I was only in first gear and I was a kilometer from home. So I was able to push it home. Now, on the bad part, I have my annual Right Men Tour of Mayhem trip in 2 weeks, and I'm hoping I can get a clutch cable and get it installed properly for my trip. Ooh boy, this will be fun. All right, everybody, as I mentioned previously, I snapped my clutch cable, so today we're going to try and replace that. I got myself a replacement, and just a heads up for those of you who own Victories, Polaris has discontinued those. I managed to find that one in another city at a CycleWorks dealership. They shipped it to me, and I found a couple online, but parts are starting to get scarce for these bikes, which is bad. All right, so they've kind of tucked this clutch cable in here fairly well, and it's tough to see, but it goes into the frame here, and it comes out on the other side. And of course, this is going to be really tough to get into here. It's actually tucked up under the tank, and it's zip tied to this thing here, and then you can kind of see where it emerges right there. So we got to cut this zip tie, which is on the oil line, and of course removing your cheese wedge might help that. So they tuck these things in here pretty good. There's a bolt under here I got to get at to undo it, and then of course one more nut on the other side. The cable is going to be the easy part. It's getting rid of all the attachments is going to be tough. So you can kind of see where it comes across here. So it shouldn't be too onerous, but famous last words. Let's get at it. So because this clutch cable runs up under the tank here, I've taken these two bolts out and we're just going to lift the tank up a bit. Now obviously be very careful because there's all kinds of plumbing underneath your tank and you don't want to tear any of that loose. So if something resists, don't push past it. Okay, so this is really tough to see, but there's a bolt right here that is holding this part of this cable on anyway. And just gently pry this stuff out of the way. 7/16 socket with a longer extension than that. Do not lose that nut. Make sure you don't lose that. And make sure the nut stays located as well. Okay, so I've kind of lifted the tank up and just sort of held it in place. There is I think it's a zip tie that goes around this rubber thing, which holds this set of oil cooler lines. And there's your clutch cable. And of course it's attached to the frame. Now, I want to cut that zip tie because I want to get the clutch cable out of there, but we're going to have to try and get a zip tie back in there when we're done. Good times. Boy, I hope that wasn't important. Okay, so I've got the clutch cable loose from there, and you can kind of see how it goes up through the frame and out the other side. So now we got to basically pull it out. With the exception of that nut down there, I need to get that loose. So let's try that. Okay, so we have a bit better access to that nut. I think I said it was 9/16 before. It's actually 1/2 inch. But it's really tight to get in here, so I'm hoping we can just kind of crack it loose. Or maybe not, I don't know. Let's see what we can do here. So after a little bit of cursing and stuff here, where are they? There's two Allen head bolts down there, and they hold on a bracket that has that nut on it. So if we loosen those, we can take the whole cable out and do it outside. So let's aim for that. How the hell am I going to get at those though? Alright, so this is a massive pain in the ass. You gotta get one of those little swivel things on there to try and get these two little bolts out. And I don't know how I'm going to get them back in there once we're done this. Fun. Okay, so I got those two little screws out that go here and holds the bracket back there, so I can get this out to get this little nut off. Now getting these two little screws back in behind there is going to be a real challenge, so I really hope I didn't screw myself here, but now we can get that nut. And that should be a 1/2 inch. Now obviously this nut's too big to slide over here, but you'll see they've put a notch in here so it just slides right off the cable. Alright, I think we might be in shape to pull this old cable out. I think. Let's hope. Here we go. Alright, we got the old cable out. And so far, they look pretty much the same. I've already put this onto the new cable so we don't forget that. So I think I got the right cable, which is great. You can see here that these things are meant for adjustment. Now, I don't know if this was done to accommodate for the cable stretching after the bike was new and broken in. I'm going to leave this kind of as is for now and probably adjust it after. I think it sits pretty open in here, or at least open enough. I'm hoping to be able to get at it. And I guess that's the chance we're going to take here. So let's start stuffing the new cable in. One thing to note when you're putting this new cable in is you need to come up behind this as you come through, and then through here and out that little hole on the other side, because otherwise you're not going to be able to get it in there. Obviously a little pre-planning before we do this, because I only want to do it once. Okay, so it actually wasn't too bad to get it in through this hole in the frame here. But now I just need to route it up through here and then up into my handlebars there. So, let the games continue. So, I don't remember 100% which wires it went up or around, but I think that'll probably do. Now we can put that bracket on. Now on a good note, hopefully you can see this. This thing here is fixed, so the bracket goes on, you just tighten this nut down. There's no adjustment right here. Now you want to make sure you get it tightened at the right orientation. Which is going to be a real pain in the ass. Probably something like that, but you want it tight. You do not want your cable slipping out of there. let's get this bracket reattached, because I think that's going to be the massive pain in the ass. I'm not going to film that because, quite frankly, you're not going to see anything anyway, because it's too confined, it's dark, and I'm going to be doing a lot of swearing. So stay tuned. Okay, so after a lot of messing around, I have the cable reinstalled. This is a real bear for that bracket. Let me go around the other side here. Yeah, so this bracket, there's those two bolts on the other side, and they're a pain because you got to come through all the wiring, and it's just not a straight shot. You cannot get at that nut very easily. Now, the only other thing I can think of is potentially taking out your battery, and maybe this battery box comes off, and if that's the case, you can get at that nut easier. That might be an easier strategy. I got mine in. I'm not going to experiment. The biggest thing I can tell you is you got to make sure that the orientation, you can see that the cable kind of has a bend and goes up. You got to make sure that orientation is at least pretty close, or you're going to have to pull it apart and do it again. So choose your battles wisely. I've got that bracket in. So then I've got this keeper on. It runs up over top of the heads. It's in here. I still have to put a zip tie on this thing here, and then hook it up to my hand grips and that, and then potentially some adjustment. But that will be once I get it all back together. First things first. All right, so I finally caved, took the seat off, took that bolt out, and then I could lift the tank up just enough to kind of feed this thing through. Big pain in the ass, but as soon as I did that, that took me about 20 seconds rather than messing around with it for 20 minutes before I could give up. Unfortunately, you have to disassemble like half your bike to do this, but hopefully you don't have to do it all that often. All right, so we've got our cable strung through to here. Now, of course, we need to attach it to the lever, but if you look underneath your lever here, there's this little plastic switch. And just be careful of that. I'm not 100% sure what that is. I think it's to let the computer know that you have the clutch pulled in when it's in gear, so that you can start it. Not 100% sure, but whatever you do, don't break it. Okay, so there's a nut under here, so we can take this lever off. 10 mil socket. Most things on this bike are metric. Now there's also a pin, so we'll slide that up, and then the handle should just come out. Now you'll see this thing's kind of covered with grease because every spring I pull it apart and grease it, as well as lube the cables. So obviously it's messy. So in here is this little end piece, and it should just kind of slide out, and we're just gonna we'll clean this grease off because I'll put a little more grease on it after. Doesn't take a lot. So what you'll see here is you've got this piece. This is for the cable, and the ball of the old cable is still in there. I just need to get that out of there. Just grab a screwdriver. So the failure of the old cable was right where it attaches to this ball. It didn't pull out. It looks like it did snap off. So probably a bit of a weak point, but I mean, that's what's taking all the stress. All right, so bear with me here because I just broke the microphone from my phone. So hopefully the audio won't suck too horribly bad. Put this end on the ball of your cable. And you'll kind of see where the ball goes, and then slide around so the cable goes in there. Find your pin. And you'll see it's directional, so it's got this sort of a slot thing on it, so it fits in accordingly. Put a little grease on that. It's a pivot point for your clutch, for your lever, and find your lever. Now this is where you got to be careful that you don't damage this little plastic thing under here. So the first step, put the cable into the bracket. Put your little end piece on. Make sure you got a little bit of grease in there. And then get that little end piece into your handle. Okay. This little tab is what pushes on this lever, so make sure you get that on there properly and not sideways. And then line up the bolt. And since it's got that little tab on it, make sure you turn it until it just gets in there snugly. Put your 10mm nut back on. Now this was really easy to put on because I think I have to adjust this cable a fair amount. But that's okay, that made it easy to put on. Nice and snug. Now obviously, I'll show you here. I have way too much play in my cable. I'll never be able to pull my clutch in properly. So that's where this part comes into play. We need to basically expand the casing to make the cable inside a bit shorter. Let me grab some wrenches. So what you need to do is you basically need to turn this, and very slowly you will extend your cable here, and then you're going to want to move this nut up to lock it into place whenever you're done. Now, because of where everything is, of course, it's a big pain in the ass, so I'm just going to slowly work away at it. And I'll show you when I'm done. Okay, so I've adjusted this to have about, that much space, and other bikes may vary, it's going to depend. But what we're looking for is I want just a little bit of slack in this to know that when the clutch lever is out, the clutch is fully engaged, there's no tension. But you also want it to be tight enough so that when you pull your lever in, you're getting full disengagement of the clutch to switch gears. So once you get to this point, obviously you're going to want to start it up, put it in gear. If that all works without anything grinding, take it for a short ride. You may have to do more adjustments. But there is the basics of how to get it in. A little more onerous than I was expecting, but at the same time, it's not something you should have to change every day. So, there it is in a nutshell. Yeah, it was a bit aggravating. Quite frankly, I think I spent probably about 2 hours doing this, which is longer than I thought. But, well, that's half the fun, right? Isn't it? Maybe? I don't know. Anyway, got to take it for a ride. We'll check it out. Thanks for watching. Okay, so at the end of the day, you watched me struggle to get that little bracket back in there. Trying to get those screws in from the other side is a massive pain in the ass. Obviously, there's not a lot of room there to get a wrench in. What I recommend you do is you get a sacrificial 1/2-inch wrench. You take a grinder and you cut a slot in it so that it'll fit.
over the cable, and then you can get it in there. Because it's a 12 point, you get just enough leverage that you can loosen and tighten this thing without having to remove everything. That is going to save you half an hour to 45 minutes minimum. I don't know what a wrench is worth, a few bucks, totally worth it.